Welcome to my talk on building ethical resilience, leadership strategies for an unstable era. My name is Dr. Susan Shapiro, and I am an associate professor here at the Graduate School of Education at Torah. So, in our day-to-day experiences as educators, either as classroom teachers or as professors, we face decision making every day. We face decisions such as simply as, will we accept a late homework assignment? We have decisions that may range in, do we have drills for children in our school when we know that they have certain sensitivities to sound? We have decisions that run the gamut in terms of trying to make decisions that are both ethically clear and collaborative, where we work with the people around us, the stakeholders, the community, other teachers, parents, and children. So how do we make these decisions, and how do we structure it in a way that is ethically sound and resonates with us as professionals, individuals, and citizens? So one of the ways that we can do this is by forming a framework to help us make these decisions. And there is a framework which is called the multiple ethical paradigm. And they can be extremely helpful when making decisions in classroom environments. And these are broken down into 4 different ways of thinking about decision making and making them ethically and making them collaboratively within classroom and school environments. These are broken down into the ethic of care, the ethic of the profession, the ethic of the critique, and the ethic of justice. So let's go a little bit more in depth about each one of these ethics. The first is the ethic of justice. So when we talk about the ethic of justice, we talk about, what does the law say in a crisis? And how do these laws support what we do in the classroom or in the school? A lot of times we find that the ethic of justice plays a major role, especially now as the environment within schools are changing and becoming a lot more legalized. And so this can play a role as we start to make decisions. But it's not the only way we make decisions. We don't only make decisions based on the law and based on this ethic. It plays into other decision-making roles as well. Another way that we think about decisions is the ethic of the profession. So how do we think about, how do people in the field think about these decisions? So sometimes we'll have a rule book that's written up. Sometimes we have a code that's written by the school. Sometimes we think about, how do other people in the profession handle these decisions? And that is another element that comes into play as we think about making decisions in our classroom and our schools. But as I said, this is not the only way that we make decisions. It's not just by, what does the law say? It's not just by, what does the profession say? There's also other elements that come into play. And another is the ethic of the critique. So when we think about, what does the law say? When we think about, what does the profession say? We also think, are these laws correct? So a lot of times decisions will come into play, and we'll have to make decisions based on our own feelings and whether or not we believe that the law is correct, or whether we feel that the code of the profession is correct. And so in my own experience, one of the decisions I had to make was, the fire department had told us that we needed to have a lock on the door, but that lock needed to have a key on it in order that we could get in and out during a fire. Now, the Department of Buildings had told us that we needed to have the key out of the lock in case of a shooting attack. So we didn't know if we should have the key in the lock or the key out of the lock. We had to use our own critique to determine whether or not this was appropriate. Now, one of the things that I looked at was, were the kids tall enough to lock themselves into the classroom? And that came into play. I also thought about whether it was the safest to have the key hidden. What if there was a fire? So I had to make decisions by critiquing the law and coming to my own decisions and determining what was correct for the students in my classroom. And these are decisions that we make every day. The ethic of critique plays a huge role and also forces us to think about our own code of ethics, whether or not we approve of some of the laws that come into play, whether or not we approve of some of the ethics of the profession that come into play. And we always ask ourselves, and the bottom line is always, is this in the best interests of my students? And is this in the best interests of the school? And this is something that we need to think about when we think about the ethic of the profession. Now, the last ethic that we'll explore is the ethic of care. And this is something that really comes into play when we're thinking about what is in the best interests of the children and what is in the best interests of the school. How do we support kids? How do we support teachers? How do we support ourselves? And when we're making decisions, hopefully we all got into teaching because we love kids, we love families, we love the graduate students that we work with. We want them to make a difference when they're in the field. And the ethic of care is so important. And we do not just have to care about others, we have to care about ourselves too. When we're going through traumatic times, how do we care about ourselves, our families, the people that we work with? The ethic of care plays a huge role when we make decisions in the field, supporting the students and supporting the families that are around us. So let's take a look at an ethical dilemma and think about how these four ethics, the ethic of care, the ethic of justice, the ethic of the critique, and the ethic of the profession come into play as you watch the following story. And Dr. Garcia, the principal of a large urban high school, is called into Mr. Lee's history classroom. It's just one stop on her long list of meetings set for the day. So, coffee in hand, she opens the door to find Mr. Lee with a very worried look on his face and a paper in his hand. Next to him sits Elijah, a high school senior, looking close to tears. His cast-covered foot is propped up on the chair in front of him, and his crutches lean awkwardly against the wall. Even though he can't play football with a cast, Elijah is still wearing the team's logo sweatshirt that proudly declares him a member of the Lions. Dr. Garcia, we have a problem, says the history teacher, holding the paper in front of him. I've caught Elijah cheating on his history exam. Here is his cheat sheet that he was holding in his palm during the exam, he says, picking up a small folded sheet of paper. Elijah drops his head down into his hands, looking ashamed and defeated. Please, chokes out Elijah, you have to give me another chance. Mr. Lee and Dr. Garcia share a look of concern. Elijah, why don't you tell us what's going on? He paused, and then he said in a sad, quiet voice, it's just, last week there were 3 scouts coming in to see me play football from 3 different colleges. I was going to be the first in my family to go to college. My father works 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, and my mom is always working and raising all 4 of us kids. I would be able to help them out with a college degree. It would change everything. My parents were so proud they threw a big party, and I was so sure football would work out that I spent all my time at practice and there was no time to study. But last week this happened and I broke my foot. So no scouts, no free ride to college. But I'm not ready to give up. I know if I have the time, I can do better at school. I want to go to college. So I had to ace this test. It's 30% of my grade. It can make the difference between me getting an academic scholarship or not. It's true. I cheated, but I didn't know what else to do. Please give me another chance to take the test again, Elijah said quietly. Mr. Lee looked sympathetic. He has served as an assistant coach for the basketball team for a few years. However, he says, the thing is, Elijah, we have a 0 tolerance policy for cheating. Getting caught like you did is an automatic failing grade and a note placed in your official transcript. The board had met recently, and had voted unanimously for the zero tolerance cheating policy. Every principal in the district had been given the mandate. This board loved to make policy, and they were always looking to make an example of people who did not comply. Many of them wanted to make a political run and use the board as a place to show how tough they could be. No, please, Elijah looks panicked. That will tank me. Please let me take the test again. I can do better, I promise. Dr. Garcia waves Mr. Lee over to the corner of the room, away from Elijah's earshot. She looks at Elijah and sighs as she considers the situation. Dr. Garcia knew she would be taking her career into her own hands by making the call and going against the policy. Could she trust Mr. Lee to be discreet if he let Elijah have a second chance? Could she and should she trust Elijah? What about Mr. Lee's involvement as a coach? Would he be suspected in any way if the special treatment got out? It's your call, Dr. Garcia. I know the school board has been pretty clear on this. If a student is caught cheating, they fail the class. What do you think we should do? Of Mrs. Garcia, we can really see the multiple ethical paradigms come into play. Upon closer examination, we can look at each one of the paradigms and really pull this decision apart. So the first is the ethic of justice. We know that the board has passed a zero tolerance policy, but Mrs. Garcia should think about what will happen to Elijah if he has a failing grade on the exam, and that note is placed in his file. When we look at it from the ethic of the critique, we wonder if that zero tolerance policy should be used in every case. And clearly there are mitigating circumstances that the board hasn't considered. So he comes from a hardworking family. He's really worked hard on his football scholarship, but life has gotten in the way and the accident has gotten in the way. Should the law uphold things that we didn't take into consideration? Are these mitigating circumstances something that we should think about as we move through the paradigms? The next paradigm that comes into play is the ethic of care. Clearly, this young man is just trying his best, and he made a mistake. Is there a way to give him another chance? Does the ethic of the law supersede the ethic of care? These are things that must be carefully weighed out and considered as we think about this case. And the last is the ethic of the profession. We know what the board had to say, and professionally, that's what we should follow. But is it right in every case? Also, could Mrs. Garcia lose her job if the board finds out she did this? Could she be responsible for Mr. Lee losing his job if the board finds out about this? What would it teach Elijah in the end if he does get a second chance? All of these need to be weighed out and considered when we face really difficult decisions, such as in this case study of Mrs. Garcia making this decision with Mr. Lee for the future of a student. Hopefully, by using these paradigms and using this model, leaders, teachers can make decisions that they can live with that are fair and just. Thank you.